Greetings everyone, I am Wexter, and this is Humcast Editorials. For those who don't know what Humcast Editorials is, which is probably most of you, considering this is the first episode, or technically our second episode, if you count that one, how about I just explain what it is? Humcast Editorials is where one member of the podcast gives you their view on a particular topic or anime of their choosing in order to generate discussion about that topic or anime. And today, what I'm going to do is talk about theming and symbolism in one of my favorite animated films, and that film being none other than Jin-Roh, the Wolf Brigade. Jin-Roh takes place in an alternate universe Japan, one where it was which the Germans occupied the country after World War II, and not the Americans. And in order to keep public order, the Japanese government has created two police forces, the Capitol Police and the local police. And within the Capitol Police, there's this group called the Special Unit, whose job it is to go after this group of terrorists called the Sect. And during one of the many riots generated by the Sect, Fusei's squad, who is a member of the Special Unit, is sent in to eradicate them. And during his escapades in the sewer to find them, he comes across what is known as a Red Riding Hood, a young girl who's tasked with sending supplies from one camp to the other. Fusei corners the young girl, and before he can fire his gun, he stops. He notices she's a minor, and as such, his conscience kicks in. He just cannot pull the trigger, even after orders from his commanding officer. And in the process, the young girl blows herself up, and Fusei is lucky to survive. After this, Fusei experiences post-traumatic stress disorder, as he cannot really fire on anybody. He's afraid to. He can't do it. He's not a beast. He is a man. And in fact, Fusei's humanity and whether or not he is in fact a beast is one of the many topics that's brought up in the film, and this is shown in many ways. When I introduce the other character before I get too much into this, who is called Kei. Kei is the sister of the girl who blew herself up in the sewers. Fusei is directed to the young girl's grave, and that's where he meets Kei. Kei, much like her sister, wears red. In fact, her jacket is red, and this is one of the first things you'll notice in the film. Not a lot of colors really pop. In fact, one of the few colors that really pops in this movie is the color red. Why is this? Well, red can mean a lot of things. Red can mean passion, but red can also mean danger and warnings. And as such, you could say Kei is like a walking warning, one where which she can in fact disturb Fusei's entire way of life. She wants to break free from this world, away from all of this political intrigue, one where all of this evil happens, where riots happen. She just wants to get away. While Fusei, he just wants to be part of a pack. He wants to belong. And this is where the question of Fusei's humanity comes into play. For this is talked about many times, but this one line from the film really hammers this theme home. When beasts interact with humans, most of the time, it doesn't end well. This brings the first question to the audience's mind as to whether or not Fusei is really a man at all, or if in fact he's a beast, wearing the skin of a man. But there's also a visual cue that makes us think maybe he's a man wearing the skin of a beast, because the Special Unit's armor looks a lot of that like a wolf, a beast, a monster, something that will tear apart a man if given the opportunity. And the funny part is, if you look at the eyes of that armor, what do you see? Red. Red is a big part of this film, and what it brings forth with that is very interesting, but we'll get back to the color red a bit later. As of right now, I'd like to talk about some scenes in the film that help hammer home this question with visual cues and other such things. The film draws heavily from Rotekäppchen, which is the German version of Little Red Riding Hood. In the book, it is mentioned that Little Red Riding Hood needs to break apart this metal armor that's been placed upon her in order to go home to her family. Doesn't that sound familiar? A lot of people would draw the comparison that Kei is the Little Red Riding Hood in the book, and Fusei is the wolf. But thanks to that line, I'd like to think that maybe Fusei represents both the Red Riding Hood and the wolf inside that book. Why would I say that? Well, what does Fusei wear when he is a beast? He wears a suit of armor, much like Red Riding Hood when she's trying to break free and go home to her family. Maybe Fusei is both, because the only times he interacts with Kei, who is the visual representation of Red Riding Hood, he is never wearing his armor. This may be a visual cue to the audience that he is maybe a man, and he's trying to find a relationship, somebody he can belong with. But he's tied back to the pack. And many times, whenever Fusei is inside the museum, you always notice his back is against that of wolves, to visually represent to the audience that he is part of a pack. He is part of the Special Unit. Whenever Fusei has a conversation with Henmi, a lot of the times the conversation is always about the Special Unit. Very rarely does Henmi even talk about Fusei as another man. Sure, they seem like they have a good relationship, but that could always be a foil for something worse, something more malevolent. And whenever they talk to each other, it always seems interesting. Visual cues are given to the audience, such as the wolves I mentioned earlier, Fusei's back up against the wolves. Or Fusei just finishing firing his gun while he's clad in his uniform. Very rarely do you see Fusei in just casual clothes with Henmi, talking about how the weather is, how everything is going. It's always about the special unit. And this is a stark contrast to Kei, where a lot of the times Fusei is talking about very human things, where she wants to get away, she wants to be free. This is why I tie Fusei's relationship with both these characters to that of both the Wolf and the Red Riding Hood. Fusei is both. He's both the Red Riding Hood and the Beast. It's Fusei's internal struggle to break free from basically being a beast. He wants to be a man. But this is where things get interesting. During the middle part of the film, we see this very cerebral scene where Fusei is chasing after Kei in the very same sewers where he found the Little Red Riding Hood. We see Fusei doing this, and it's very interesting, as what's with him is a pack of wolves. Maybe this is an internalization of Fusei's own fears. Fusei's own fears of his pack ripping apart Kei and killing her, taking her away from him. And interspliced with the scene is Fusei among that of wolves. On top of a hill is a lone wolf, and we even see scenes of him shooting round after round into Kei. Maybe this could also be an internalization of Fusei's own desire to be part of the pack. Maybe if he killed the Red Riding Hood, he would never be in this situation, and he'd be part of the pack itself. I believe this scene is a perfect representation of Fusei's internal struggle, him both wanting to be a man and wanting to be a beast. Maybe both. Now, we're going to get to major spoiler territory right at the end of the film, so if you've yet to see Jin-Roh in its entirety, I highly recommend you turn off this video right now. Spoilers are going to be going on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It is revealed that Kei has actually been working for the capital and local police, who have created this entire plan in order to destroy the special unit entirely. In fact, Kei is not even the sister of the Red Riding Hood that Fusei found at the start of the film. She's in fact been working for Henmi, who is Fusei's friend. And Fusei, after saving Kei, runs into the sewers where we see Fusei's mentor. Fusei's mentor brings some very interesting lines to the film. He says this line: "We are not men disguised as mere dogs. We are wolves disguised as men." Which is interesting because the unit he's part of is called the Wolf Brigade. Interesting comparison, correct? Yes. In fact, the parallels between the Red Riding Hood would make you think that Fusei is in fact the wolf in the story, that he will end up consuming the Red Riding Hood, that he will be the one who kills her. And I believe this is also an internalization of Fusei's own fears from earlier in the film. This moment has been what the film's been leading up to. Fusei puts on the special unit uniform, the one that closely resembles that of a wolf. Fusei then chases after Henmi without saying a single word to Kei. This is important, as Fusei does not speak to Kei while wearing his full armor. He does not speak to her as a beast. He only ever speaks to her in the film as a man. But when Fusei put on that armor for the last time, he allowed the beast to consume him. He is no longer the man he once was. That is gone. The beast has won. The struggle is now finally over. Fusei then chases after the Capitol police officers who are in the sewer, and he finds Henmi. He ends up firing at him, but only injuring Henmi's leg, and this is where we get back to the color red that I was talking about earlier. As Henmi tries to get through the sewers and get away from Fusei, we notice the walls around him are all red, as if danger is coming in on him from all sides. A fear of Fusei, a fear of danger, and by the time he escapes from all the red that has been surrounding him, you see crisp blues and greens and grays. And when he finally thinks he's escaped, he's stopped by a wall with red on it, and Fusei is right behind him, with his eyes glowing an intense red. This is to show the audience that there is no escape. Danger has cornered Henmi, and when Fusei finally kills Henmi, he returns back to his commanding officer. Now here's where we get to the final part of the film, and why I was mentioning how Fusei never speaks to Kei when he's wearing the armors of the beast. He only speaks to her as a man, but his final words to her as a man are to kill her, and as they recite the last parts of the Red Riding Hood. "Mother, what great big teeth you have. Mother, what big claws you have." This is to show the final moments of the Red Riding Hood. As she recites this, Fusei fires the gun into her and kills her. Fusei has just killed the last bit of humanity he has. He is now fully, entirely a beast. No shred of humanity is left on him. And that is the real tragedy of Jin-Roh, one which I hope I've talked about in a bit more detail. It's a beautifully crafted film with lots of visual cues and metaphors and symbolism that brings back to the whole beast or man dynamic. It uses the Red Riding Hood story very interestingly to describe this, and ultimately, I hope you've learned something new about the film, and how it uses metaphor, color, and symbolism in order to tell its theme of Fusei's struggle to be a man or a beast. And this has been Wexter of Humcast, And hey, if you enjoyed Humcast Editorials and you want to talk about the themes and symbolism of Jin-Roh in more detail with us, why don't you leave us a comment? We'll get back to you and reply as soon as we can. Hey, if you also like Humcast Editorials and you want us to continue this, the best way to do that is to give us a like. And hey, if you enjoyed, this entire spiel, why don't you subscribe to us? Because we do a podcast whenever we can where we go into animes and topics like this in more detail with more people to discuss. This is Wexter, signing out.